They say revenge is a dish best served cold. I say it's a dish best served with precision, patience, and a healthy dose of poetic justice. My name is Harold Westmore, and at 78 years old, I finally understood what it meant to be truly betrayed by family. This is the story of how my daughter-in-law, Victoria, thought she could steal from me and get away with it. This is the story of how very wrong she was. The pain started on a Tuesday morning in late September. Not the physical pain. I'd grown accustomed to that old companion years ago, but the pain of realization, the kind that cuts deeper than any scalpel and festers longer than any wound. I was sitting in my leather armchair, the one my late wife Margaret had given me for our 40th anniversary, when I reached for my medication organizer. The plastic container sat on the side table where I always kept it, organized with military precision, Monday through Sunday, morning and evening doses. Each compartment should have contained my heart medication, my blood pressure pills, and the small white tablets that kept my chronic pain manageable. Tuesday morning's compartment was empty. At first, I thought perhaps I'd already taken them and forgotten. Age does that to you sometimes, plays tricks with your memory like a mischievous child hiding your keys. But when I checked Tuesday evening, Wednesday, and Thursday, I found them all empty. A cold dread settled into my bones, the kind that has nothing to do with the autumn chill seeping through the windows. I lived in the guest house behind my son Marcus's main residence, a converted carriage house that Margaret and I had built 30 years ago when the property was ours alone. After she passed, Marcus insisted I sign the main house over to him and Victoria, promising I could live in the guest house for as long as I needed. "It's still your home, Dad," he'd said, his hand on my shoulder, his eyes sincere. I'd believed him then. I'd trusted him. Now, as I sat staring at the empty pill organizer, I wondered what other mistakes I'd made. I checked the medicine cabinet in my small bathroom. The prescription bottles were there, but when I shook them, they were lighter than they should have been. I opened the cap on my heart medication, the expensive one, the one that cost nearly $400 even with insurance, and counted. I should have had 60 pills. There were 32. My hands began to shake, and not from my condition. I methodically checked each bottle. My blood pressure medication was short by 20 pills. The pain medication was nearly gone, though I just refilled it 2 weeks ago. Someone had been systematically stealing from me, and there was only one person besides myself who had a key to my small home. Victoria. She'd insisted on having a spare key. "In case of emergencies," she'd said with that practiced smile of hers, the one that never quite reached her eyes. Marcus had backed her up, saying it was for my own safety. "What if you fall, Dad? What if something happens and we need to get in?" I'd relented, as I always did, not wanting to cause trouble, not wanting to be the difficult old man who made things complicated. That key, I now realized, was the key to my current predicament. I sat back down in my chair and thought about Victoria. She'd married my son 15 years ago, a whirlwind romance that had Marcus smitten from the first date. She was beautiful, I'll give her that, tall and elegant with sharp features and sharper ambition. She'd come from money, or at least she acted like it, though I'd never been able to verify her claims about her family's wealth. She had a way of spending that certainly suggested comfort with luxury. Marcus was a successful accountant, made good money, but not the kind of money Victoria seemed to think they should have. I'd watched over the years as she pushed him to upgrade everything, the cars, the house, the vacations. She had expensive tastes, and an even more expensive habit of getting what she wanted. But why steal my medication? The answer came to me slowly, like dawn breaking over a cold landscape. The pain medication, that was what she was after. Opiates. They had street value, could be sold or traded. The other medications, she probably took to cover her tracks, to make it look random, like I'd simply misplaced them or taken them erratically. The realization made my blood run cold, then hot with anger. This woman, this person my son had brought into our family, was not only stealing from me, but stealing medication I needed to survive. My heart condition wasn't a minor inconvenience. It was serious enough that missing doses could land me in the hospital or worse. She was playing with my life as casually as someone might cheat at cards. I made a decision then, sitting in that chair with my empty pill organizer in my lap. I would not confront her. I would not tell Marcus, who would likely defend his wife, caught between loyalty to his father and love for his spouse. I would not call the police and create a scandal that would tear the family apart. No, I would do something far more effective. I would catch her in the act, document her crimes, and then I would extract justice in a way she would never forget. I had been a prosecutor for 35 years before retirement. I knew how to build a case. I knew how to be patient. And I knew how to make people pay for their crimes. Victoria had made a grave error. She had underestimated the old man in the guest house. She thought I was weak, addled, easy prey. She was about to learn that Harold Westmore had not lost a single step, and that crossing me was the worst mistake of her life. The game had begun, and I intended to win. The next morning, I drove to the hardware store in the neighboring town. I didn't want to risk running into anyone who might mention it to Marcus or Victoria. At my age, with my white hair and gentle demeanor, I'm essentially invisible to most people. They see an elderly man and assume I'm harmless, confused, perhaps shopping for birdseed or light bulbs. I bought 4 small cameras, the kind advertised for home security. They were wireless, connected to an app on a smartphone, and could record continuously or only when they detected motion. The young clerk who helped me assumed they were for my front porch, protection against package thieves. I smiled and nodded, letting him believe whatever made the transaction easiest. Back at home, I spent the afternoon installing them. One went on the bookshelf, hidden behind a row of legal textbooks, pointed directly at the medicine cabinet in my bathroom. Another went on top of the kitchen cupboard, aimed at the side table where I kept my pill organizer. The third I placed in the bedroom, disguised within a decorative wooden box on my dresser, covering the nightstand where I sometimes kept backup medication. The fourth I kept as a spare. I downloaded the app on my phone, tested each camera, and felt a grim satisfaction as I watched the live feeds. Everything was clear, well lit, perfectly positioned. Now I just had to wait. While I waited, I did research. I called my pharmacy, pretending to be confused about my refill dates. The pharmacist, a kind woman named Ellen who'd been filling my prescriptions for years, checked her records. "Mr. Westmore, you're not due for refills for another 2 weeks on most of these. You just picked them up 12 days ago. And I requested the full 90-day supply?" "Yes, sir. All of them were 90-day prescriptions. Is something wrong?" No, I said smoothly. "Just making sure my records match yours. You know how it is, trying to keep track of everything." She laughed sympathetically, and we ended the call. So Victoria hadn't been forging prescriptions or calling in fake refills. She was simply stealing from my existing supply. That was both good and bad. Good because it meant her operation was small scale, probably personal use or selling to a limited circle. Bad because it meant she'd continue, growing bolder, possibly escalating. I needed to understand her pattern. Over the next week, I kept careful watch on my cameras, checking the footage every few hours. I also started keeping a detailed log of my pill counts, noting each time I took medication and exactly how many remained. Victoria came to check on me 3 times that week. She always had an excuse, bringing me leftovers from dinner, asking if I needed anything from the store, offering to help with laundry. I played my role perfectly. The grateful father-in-law, perhaps a bit forgetful, certainly harmless. On Thursday afternoon, she struck. I was sitting in my chair, apparently dozing. I'd learned to feign sleep convincingly, when I heard the key in my lock. She entered quietly, too quietly for someone on an innocent errand. Through barely open eyes, I watched her glance around, checked to make sure I was asleep, then moved directly to my bathroom. After she left, I reviewed the camera footage. It was perfect. The video showed Victoria entering my bathroom, going straight to the medicine cabinet, and methodically opening bottles. She poured pills into her hand, counted them, then transferred them to a small plastic bag she'd pulled from her pocket. She took 10 pills from my pain medication, 5 from my heart medication, and a handful from my blood pressure pills. The whole operation took less than 3 minutes. She was practiced, efficient, confident. But she'd made one critical error. She'd looked directly at the camera twice, her face fully visible, well lit by the bathroom light. There was no question of identity, no possibility of claiming it was someone else. I had her. But I didn't act. Not yet. A good prosecutor knows that one piece of evidence, no matter how damning, can be challenged. I needed a pattern. I needed multiple instances. I needed an airtight case. Over the next 3 weeks, Victoria visited 7 more times. 5 of those times, she stole medication. I documented everything: dates, times, exact quantities. I made copies of the footage, stored them in 3 separate locations including a cloud service. I took screenshots showing her face clearly. I compiled a detailed spreadsheet showing the correlation between her visits and missing pills. I also did something else. I started researching Victoria's life. Using public records and the investigative skills I'd honed over decades, I began to uncover things that Marcus either didn't know or chose to ignore. Victoria had a sealed juvenile record. I couldn't access the details, but its existence suggested trouble in her past. She'd attended 3 different colleges without graduating from any. She had 2 previous marriages, both ending in divorce, both with acrimonious court battles over assets. There were small claims court judgments against her from creditors. She'd worked at several pharmaceutical companies in sales roles, which explained her comfort around medication. The picture that emerged was of a woman who'd been running cons and schemes most of her adult life, someone who saw other people as resources to be exploited. Marcus, with his steady income and trusting nature, must have seemed like a perfect mark. The fact that he came with an elderly father living on the property, one with expensive medications, was probably just a bonus she couldn't resist. I felt anger, yes, but also a cold, calculating determination. This woman had wormed her way into my family, manipulated my son, and was now literally stealing my health. She needed to be stopped, and the punishment needed to fit the crime. By mid-November, I had everything I needed. But I still hadn't decided exactly how to proceed. I could call the police. The evidence was more than sufficient for charges of theft and elder abuse. I could confront Marcus with the evidence and let him handle it. I could file for a restraining order. But none of those options felt sufficient. They were legal, appropriate, measured. And Victoria deserved something more. She deserved to understand what it felt like to be vulnerable, to be betrayed by someone you should be able to trust, to face consequences she couldn't manipulate or charm her way out of. She deserved to be outmaneuvered by someone smarter than she was. The plan came to me one evening as I was reviewing the footage yet again. Victoria had a pattern I'd noticed. After stealing pills, she would return within 24 to 48 hours to check on me, ostensibly to make sure I was okay, but really to assess whether I'd noticed anything amiss. It was her way of staying ahead of potential discovery. That pattern was her weakness, and I was going to exploit it. The key to a successful trap is making the prey believe they're in control. They need to think they're being clever, that they're getting away with something, that they've outsmarted everyone around them. Only then, when their confidence is highest, do you spring the trap. I began the setup on a cold Monday in early December. The first phase was simple. I needed Victoria to believe she found an even better score, something worth taking more risks for. I called Marcus during his work hours, knowing Victoria would be home alone. "Son, I need to talk to you about something medical. Nothing urgent, don't worry, but I'd prefer to discuss it in person. Can you stop by after work?" He agreed immediately, concern in his voice. Good. That meant he'd likely mention it to Victoria, and she'd be curious. That evening, Marcus came to the guest house. I had prepared tea, Margaret's china, set out formally, creating an atmosphere of importance. We sat in the small living room, and I began my performance. "Marcus, I wanted you to know that my doctor has prescribed something new. The pain has been getting worse, and the regular medication isn't cutting it anymore." I paused, watching his face cloud with worry. "They put me on something stronger. Much stronger." I pulled out a prescription bottle, one I had prepared carefully. It was real, an old prescription bottle from years ago, but I'd printed a new label using my computer. It read, "Oxycodone 80 milligrams. Take 1 tablet every 4 to 6 hours as needed for pain." The dosage was intentionally high, the kind that would catch Victoria's attention. "Dad, that's serious medication. Are you sure you need something that's strong? The doctor says it's necessary." I've been managing, trying not to complain, but the truth is, some days the pain is unbearable. I let my voice waver slightly. Not too much, just enough. "I picked them up today. 90 pills. They're expensive, even with insurance, but if they help." Marcus reached over and squeezed my hand. "Dad, I'm sorry you're going through this. Have you been in pain all this time and not told us?" The guilt in his voice nearly made me feel bad about the deception. Nearly. But then I remembered Victoria's face on the camera footage, cold and calculating as she stole medication I actually needed, and my resolve hardened. I didn't want to worry anyone. But yes, it's been difficult. I gestured to the bottle on the table between us. "The pharmacist said I need to be very careful with these. They're powerful, highly controlled. I'm supposed to keep them locked up." I watched Marcus's eyes focus on the bottle. He'd definitely remember this conversation. And more importantly, he'd definitely tell Victoria. After he left, I moved to phase 2. I took the bottle, which actually contained nothing but acetaminophen tablets I'd carefully placed inside, and put it prominently in my medicine cabinet. Right in front, impossible to miss. I made sure the cameras had clear views. Then I waited. Victoria came the next day, earlier than usual. She brought soup, claiming she'd made too much and thought I might like some. I invited her in, thanked her profusely, and made a show of being particularly slow and confused. "How are you feeling, Harold?" she asked, her voice sugary with false concern. "Oh, managing. The new medication seems to be helping." I let the statement hang in the air, watching her face. There, a flicker of interest in her eyes. "New medication?" "Yes, for the pain. Stronger than what I had before. The doctor says I should start feeling better soon." She stayed longer than usual, making small talk, but I could see her distraction. She kept glancing toward the bathroom, her mind clearly working. After she left, I checked the cameras. She hadn't taken anything, not yet. She was being cautious, gathering information first. Perfect. Over the next few days, I played up my improvement whenever I saw Marcus or Victoria. I made sure to move a bit easier, complain less, mentioned how much the new medication was helping. I even went for longer walks around the property, something I hadn't done in months. "Those new pills must be working miracles," Victoria commented one afternoon, watching me return from a walk. "They really are," I agreed. "Though I hate how strong they are. The pharmacist warned me about them. Highly addictive, apparently. I'm supposed to be very careful." I paused, then added, "I sometimes wonder if I should even have something so powerful in the house. But when the pain hits, I'm grateful for them." I was baiting the hook, and Victoria was circling. On Friday evening, I left the guest house for several hours, something I'd arranged carefully. I told Marcus I was meeting old friends from the prosecutor's office for dinner in the city, about an hour's drive away. This was true, actually. I'd called in favors and arranged an actual dinner, complete with witnesses who could testify I was nowhere near home. Before leaving, I made sure everything was in place. The fake oxycodone bottle was front and center in the medicine cabinet. The cameras were recording. I'd added a thin piece of tape to the bottle cap, positioned so that if anyone opened it, the tape would break, a trick I had learned from evidence handling. I drove to the city, had dinner with colleagues who were delighted to see me, and made sure we took photos together with timestamps. I paid with a credit card, creating a financial record. I kept my phone's location services on. Every piece of the alibi was airtight. When I returned home at 10:30 that evening, I checked the cameras immediately. Victoria had come at 7:15, using her key. The footage showed her moving directly to the bathroom, with barely a glance around. She'd grown complacent, confident in her pattern. She grabbed the oxycodone bottle, opened it. I could see the tape breaking on the high-definition video, and poured out a handful of pills. Then her expression changed. She looked confused, brought the pills closer to examine them. The camera captured her face perfectly as realization dawned that these weren't oxycodone at all. But here's where my psychological profiling of her paid off. She didn't put them back. Instead, she took them anyway, about 20 pills. Perhaps she thought I'd made a mistake, that the pharmacy had mislabeled the bottle. Perhaps she was so accustomed to stealing that she took them on instinct. Or perhaps she simply didn't want to leave evidence that she'd been caught. Whatever her reasoning, it didn't matter. She'd stolen pills from a bottle clearly labeled as a controlled substance. The intent was what mattered legally. After she left, I reviewed all the footage multiple times, making sure everything was clear and documented. Then I moved to phase 3. I carefully replaced the acetaminophen in the bottle with actual over-the-counter pain reliever, counted them meticulously, and documented the theft with photographs showing the before and after count. I printed high-quality copies of the videos still showing Victoria's face, her actions, the clear labels on the medication bottles. Then I prepared a detailed dossier, a timeline of thefts, video evidence, photographs, my personal logs of missing medication, pharmacy records showing when I'd filled prescriptions and how many pills should remain. I included documentation of the financial harm, the cost of the medications, the potential health consequences of missing doses. I added information about her past, the sealed records, the pattern of behavior. Finally, I wrote a letter explaining everything. Not to the police, not yet. To Marcus. The dossier was comprehensive, irrefutable, devastating. It was prosecutorial work, the kind that would make a conviction almost certain. But I still wasn't ready to spring the trap completely. There was one more element I needed: confrontation. I needed Victoria to show her true face, not just to cameras, but to Marcus. I needed my son to see, with his own eyes, who he'd married. I chose Sunday afternoon for the final act. I knew Marcus and Victoria were home. They typically spent Sundays together, relaxing, doing yard work, the normal rhythms of married life. I'd noticed Marcus outside raking leaves, Victoria visible through the kitchen window preparing something for dinner. I called Marcus's cell phone. "Son, could you and Victoria come over for a bit? There's something important I need to discuss with both of you." There was a pause. "Is everything okay, Dad?" "Everything's fine. I just need to talk to you both. It's important." 20 minutes later, they knocked on my door. I'd set the stage carefully. The living room was neat but not overly so. I wanted to appear normal, not like I'd been preparing for this. The dossier sat on the coffee table, closed, unremarkable. My laptop was open on the desk, angled away so they couldn't see the screen. "Come in, sit down," I said, gesturing to the couch. They sat together, Marcus looking concerned, Victoria wearing her practiced smile. "What's this about, Harold?" Victoria asked, her tone light but wary. She'd noticed the formal setup, the serious atmosphere. I remained standing, a position of authority, something I had learned from decades in courtrooms. "I need to discuss something that's been happening, something serious. But first, Marcus, I want you to know that I love you. You're my son, and nothing will change that." Marcus's face paled. "Dad, you're scaring me. Are you sick? Is it the cancer coming back?" "No, nothing like that. Though this does concern my health." I picked up the dossier. "Over the past several months, medication has been disappearing from my medicine cabinet. Important medication, my heart pills, blood pressure medication, pain medicine. Medication I need to survive." Victoria's face remained perfectly composed, but I saw her hand tighten on the couch cushion. Marcus looked confused. "Disappearing? Dad, are you sure you haven't just been confused about taking them? Maybe we should talk to your doctor about your memory." "My memory is fine, Marcus." I opened the dossier and pulled out the pill count logs. "I've been documenting every single pill I take for the past 2 months. I know exactly what should be in each bottle. And I know exactly how much is missing." I handed him the log. He scanned it, his frown deepening. "This shows. Dad, this shows a lot missing. But maybe the pharmacy made a mistake when filling the prescriptions?" That was my first thought too. I pulled out the pharmacy records. "So I checked with Ellen at the pharmacy. These are the records showing exactly what was dispensed and when. The numbers don't match what should be remaining." Victoria's voice cut in, still calm but with an edge. "Harold, what exactly are you suggesting?" I turned to her fully. "I'm not suggesting anything, Victoria. I'm stating facts. Someone has been systematically stealing my medication. Someone with access to this guest house. Someone with a key." Marcus stood up, defensive. "Dad, if you're implying that, Victoria..." "I'm not implying." I moved to the laptop and turned it so they could see the screen. "I'm stating. I have video evidence." I pressed play. The footage rolled, Victoria entering with her key, going directly to the bathroom, opening medication bottles, transferring pills to her pocket. The timestamp was clear. Her face was clear. Her actions were unmistakable. Marcus stared at the screen, his face draining of color. "What? Victoria, what is this?" "It's fake," she said immediately, her voice sharp now, the gentle facade cracking. "He's manipulated the video somehow. This is insane. There's more," I said calmly. I played the next clip, then the next. 5 different instances, 5 different dates, each showing the same pattern. I have copies stored in 3 separate locations, including with my attorney. The timestamps correspond with the days you came to check on me. The pill counts in my logs match exactly with what's missing in these videos." Victoria stood up abruptly. "Marcus, you can't seriously believe this. He's a senile old man making accusations." "I'm neither senile nor making accusations." I interrupted, my voice cold. I'm presenting evidence. Evidence that would hold up in any court of law. Evidence that shows you've been committing theft and elder abuse. Elder abuse? Victoria laughed, but it sounded hollow. You're fine. Look at you. You're healthy enough to set up spy cameras and create elaborate presentations. Thanks to medication, I've managed to keep enough of to survive. I said, medication you've been stealing. Do you know what could have happened if I'd missed too many doses of my heart medication? I could have had a stroke. I could have died. You were playing with my life for what? Pocket money? Drug addiction? Resale value? Marcus sank back onto the couch, his hands shaking as they covered his face. Victoria, tell me this isn't true. Please tell me there's some explanation. The room fell silent. Victoria looked between us, her mind clearly working, calculating. I could see her trying to find an angle, a way to spin this. But there was none. The evidence was too solid, too comprehensive. Finally, she tried a different approach. Fine. Fine. Yes, I took some pills. So what? You have plenty, Harold. You're not even taking half of what's prescribed. I saw the bottles. They were full, sitting there unused. I have chronic pain too. Did anyone think about that? Did anyone care? No. So yes, I took some medication that was just going to waste anyway. They weren't going to waste, I said quietly. They were maintaining my health. And you took my heart medication too. What possible use could you have for that except to sell? She said nothing, her jaw tight. Marcus looked up, his eyes red. How could you do this? To him? To my father? Oh, please. Your father. Victoria's composure was crumbling now, replaced with venom. Your precious father who judges me constantly, who's never thought I was good enough for you, who controls you with guilt and obligation. That's not true, Marcus said, but his voice was weak. Isn't it? We can't do anything without checking with Harold first. We can't move. We can't sell this property. We're stuck here because of him, because he manipulated you into keeping him close. I'm trapped in this life, in this house, playing caretaker to an old man who's too stubborn to go to a proper facility. That's enough, I said, and something in my voice stopped her. You're right about one thing, Victoria. I have judged you. Because I'm a good judge of character, and I saw exactly what you were from the beginning. A con artist. A manipulator. Someone who saw my son as a meal ticket. I pulled out the additional research I compiled. I know about your previous marriages. I know about the sealed juvenile record. I know about the debts, the judgments, the pattern of schemes. You've been running games your whole life, and Marcus was just your latest mark. Victoria's face twisted with rage. You had no right to investigate me. I had every right to protect my son. I turned to Marcus. I'm sorry you have to learn this way, but you need to know who you married. Marcus was crying now, quietly, his world crumbling. Victoria, is any of this true? Were you? Was our whole marriage a con? Don't be stupid, she snapped. Of course I love you. But love doesn't pay the bills. Love doesn't maintain a lifestyle. Your father's sitting on millions in assets tied up in this property, and we're stuck with his measly income while he hoards everything. I hoard nothing, I said. This property is held in a trust. It will go to Marcus when I die, as was always planned. You knew that. What you didn't know is that the trust includes provisions that can disinherit beneficiaries who mistreat the trustor. My attorney and I built in protections years ago. That stopped her cold. What? If I choose to, I can amend the trust to exclude you entirely. Marcus will still inherit, but you'll get nothing. Not the house, not the property, not the assets. That's what you've really been after, isn't it? You've been waiting for me to die so you could cash in. Victoria's face went white, then red. You vindictive old bastard. I'm vindictive? My voice rose for the first time. You stole medication that keeps my heart beating? You risked my life for your greed. And you have the audacity to call me vindictive? Everyone, please calm down, Marcus said, his voice breaking. We need to figure out what to do. I know what I'm doing, I said, my voice returning to its measured calm. I'm giving you both a choice. Victoria, you have two options. Option 1. I call the police right now. I file charges for theft and elder abuse. With this evidence, you'll be prosecuted. You'll likely face jail time, definitely probation, and certainly a criminal record. It will destroy any career prospects you have, and the scandal will be public. Her eyes narrowed. And option 2? Option 2, you leave. Tonight, you pack your essentials and you go. Marcus files for divorce immediately, citing irreconcilable differences. We'll keep the theft quiet if you cooperate. You sign away any claim to this property, any claim to Marcus's assets, and you disappear from our lives. In exchange, I don't press charges. That's blackmail, she hissed. No, that's mercy. More than you deserve. I looked at my son. Marcus, this is your choice too. You're an adult, and you get to decide. But you need to decide now, with clear eyes, knowing the truth. Marcus looked at Victoria, really looked at her, perhaps for the first time. Did you ever love me? Really? She opened her mouth, then closed it. The silence was answer enough. Get out, Marcus whispered. Please just get out. Victoria stood there for a long moment, her face a mask of fury and calculation. Then she grabbed her purse and stormed toward the door. She turned back once, her eyes meeting mine with pure hatred. You'll regret this, she said. No, I replied calmly. I don't think I will. You have until midnight to leave the property. After that, I'm calling the police regardless of your choice. She slammed the door hard enough to rattle the windows. Marcus collapsed back onto the couch, his body shaking with sobs. I sat beside him and pulled him close, the way I had when he was a child and the world had hurt him. I'm sorry, son, I said softly. I'm so sorry you had to see that. But you needed to know. How long have you known? He asked. About the theft? 2 months. About her character? Longer than I should have stayed silent about. Why didn't you tell me sooner? Because you weren't ready to hear it. And because I needed to be absolutely certain to have proof you couldn't deny. If I'd come to you with suspicions, she would have convinced you I was paranoid, confused, trying to cause trouble. This way, there's no doubt. He nodded against my shoulder. What do I do now? Now? You grieve. You heal. And eventually you rebuild. You're strong, Marcus. Stronger than you know. You'll get through this. Will you help me? With the divorce, the legal stuff? Every step of the way. I promised. That's what family does. We sat there for a long time, father and son, as the December darkness gathered outside. Through the window, I could see lights coming on in the main house, could hear sounds of movement, of packing. Victoria was making her choice. Victoria left that night. True to form, she tried to take more than she was entitled to, packing expensive items from the house that Marcus had paid for. I'd anticipated this, and had already documented the house's contents with photographs and appraisals. When she loaded her car with Marcus's grandmother's silver and several pieces of valuable art, I calmly informed her that this constituted theft, and I was documenting everything. She unloaded the items, cursing us both, and left with only her personal belongings and the car that was in her name. The last I saw of her was her taillights disappearing down the driveway at 11:45 p.m. Marcus stayed in the guest house that night. We talked until nearly dawn, about his marriage, about the signs he'd missed, about how skilled manipulators work. I told him it wasn't his fault, that Victoria had been playing a long con, and that good people often can't see evil because they don't think that way themselves. She said she loved me, he kept repeating. On our wedding day, on anniversaries, every day. Was it all a lie? I don't know, I answered honestly. Maybe she believed it when she said it. Maybe she convinced herself it was true. Or maybe she's such a good actress she fooled even herself. It doesn't matter now. What matters is that you're free of her, and you can heal. The divorce proceedings were messy but relatively quick. Marcus filed on Monday morning. Victoria initially tried to fight it, demanding half of everything including a portion of the family property. Her lawyer sent threatening letters, claiming elder abuse on my part, mental manipulation, arguing that I coerced Marcus into divorcing her. That's when I released a carefully edited version of the video evidence to the divorce attorneys. Not the full footage, just enough to show Victoria's theft. I also included statements from my doctor about the potential health consequences of missing medication, and documentation of the financial cost of the stolen pills. Victoria's lawyer withdrew from the case within 48 hours. No attorney wants to defend someone with that kind of evidence against them, especially in a situation involving elder abuse. Victoria tried to represent herself briefly, but when Marcus's attorney pointed out that I could still press criminal charges at any time, she folded. The divorce was finalized in March. Victoria received nothing except her personal effects and her car. She had to sign an agreement acknowledging she had no claim to the property, no claim to any of Marcus's assets, and no right to contact either of us again. In exchange, I agreed not to pursue criminal charges. I did, however, make one additional call. I contacted the state medical board and reported that someone had been stealing prescription-controlled substances from an elderly patient. I didn't name Victoria specifically. I didn't have to. I simply provided the facts. The theft had occurred, the perpetrator had pharmaceutical sales experience, and there was video evidence if they needed it for any investigation. The medical board takes such reports seriously. If Victoria ever tried to work in healthcare or pharmaceuticals again, that report would surface in background checks. It was a small addition to her punishment, but an important one. She'd made her living manipulating systems and people in medical contexts. Now that avenue was closed to her. But my revenge didn't end with Victoria's departure. No, that was merely the first act. Because as the weeks passed and Marcus began to heal, I realized something important. Victoria had not acted entirely alone. There were people who had enabled her, who had looked the other way, who bore some responsibility for what had happened. And they, too, needed to understand the consequences of their choices. Dr. Raymondson had been my physician for 12 years. He was competent, thorough, and generally attentive. But as I reviewed everything that had happened, I realized he had failed me in a critical way. I'd mentioned to him, during at least 3 appointments over the past year, that I seemed to be going through my pain medication faster than expected. I'd attributed it to increased pain levels, and he'd simply increased my dosage and refill frequency without asking deeper questions. He'd never suggested I count my pills, never asked if anyone else had access to my medications, never considered that theft might be occurring. For an elderly patient living with family, this was a massive oversight. Elder abuse, including medication theft, is common enough that physicians are supposed to be trained to watch for signs. Dr. Chen had missed them entirely, or worse, hadn't bothered to look. I made an appointment to see him in April, 3 weeks after Victoria's departure. I brought my complete dossier. "Harold, good to see you," he said, shaking my hand as I entered his office. "How are you managing? I see you're due for refills on several medications." "Actually, Raymond, that's what I wanted to discuss." I sat down and placed the folder on his desk. "I need to file a formal complaint, and I wanted to give you the courtesy of hearing it from me first." His expression shifted from friendly to concerned. "A complaint? About what?" "About the fact that for nearly 6 months, someone was stealing my medication, and you never noticed despite my explicitly telling you something was wrong." I opened the folder and showed him my logs, my notes from our appointments where I'd mentioned the issue, and the documentation of what had actually been happening. I didn't show him the videos. That would have been a violation of Victoria's privacy, ironically, but I showed him everything else. Dr. Chen's face paled as he reviewed the documents. "Harold, I had no idea. You said you thought your pain was increasing, and your response was to increase my dosage without any investigation. You never asked if my pills were secure. You never suggested counting them. You never inquired whether anyone else had access to my home. These are basic questions for elderly patients, especially those living with family members." "I assumed you were managing your medications properly." "You assumed. And your assumptions could have killed me. Do you understand that missing doses of my heart medication could have caused a stroke? That the theft of my blood pressure pills could have triggered a cardiac event?" He had no response to that. What could he say? "I'm not filing a malpractice suit," I continued. "The damages would be difficult to prove, and that's not what this is about. But I am filing a formal complaint with the state medical board. They need to know that you failed to recognize clear signs of elder abuse. And I'm transferring to Dr. Patricia Morrison at the University Clinic. She came highly recommended by a colleague's widow who had similar concerns about oversight." "Harold, please. Let me make this right." "I can. You can learn from this," I interrupted. "You can be more vigilant with your other elderly patients. You can ask the hard questions. That's how you make this right. Not with me, but with the next patient who might be in danger." I stood up, gathering my folder. "The complaint will be filed by the end of the week. I suggest you review your protocols for elderly patients and make appropriate changes." I left his office feeling no satisfaction, only a grim sense of duty fulfilled. Dr. Chen wasn't evil, just negligent. But negligence in medicine can be as deadly as malice. The complaint I filed was detailed and factual. It resulted in a formal review of Dr. Chen's practice, mandatory additional training in elder abuse recognition, and a notation in his file. Not career-ending, but enough to ensure he'd think twice before dismissing an elderly patient's concerns again. Next on my list was Marcus's friend David, who'd introduced him to Victoria 15 years ago. David was a real estate developer, flashy and successful, the kind of man who wore expensive watches and drove cars that cost more than most people's houses. He'd met Victoria at some networking event and thought she'd be perfect for Marcus, successful, beautiful, sophisticated. What he'd failed to do was any due diligence. A simple background check would have revealed Victoria's troubled past, her failed marriages, her pattern of financial problems. But David had been blinded by her appearance and charm, and he'd vouched for her without reservation. I invited David to lunch in May, choosing a quiet restaurant where we could talk privately. He arrived in his typical style, loud greetings, expansive gestures, radiating confidence. "Harold, good to see you. How's Marcus holding up after the divorce?" "Rough business, that." We ordered, made small talk, and then I got to the point. "David, do you remember introducing Marcus to Victoria?" His expression became guarded. "Of course. Look, I feel terrible about how things turned out. Do you? Because I'm curious about something. Did you know about her background when you introduced them?" "Her background?" her 2 previous divorces, her sealed juvenile record, her history of debt and financial judgments. Did you know about any of that? David shifted uncomfortably. I mean, I knew she'd been married before, but did you tell Marcus that? Did you mention that the woman you were setting him up with had 2 failed marriages and significant financial problems? It didn't seem relevant. It was extremely relevant. And if you'd mentioned it, Marcus might have proceeded more carefully. He might have done his own research. He might have protected himself. David's face reddened. Now wait a minute. I'm not responsible for Victoria turning out to be. You're responsible for vouching for someone without doing basic due diligence. You put your friend at risk because you didn't bother to verify who you were introducing him to. I leaned forward. Did you benefit from the introduction, David? What? No, because I've been thinking about the timing. You introduced them right around when you were developing that shopping center on the east side. The one that needed investment capital. Marcus invested $200,000 in that project, didn't he? About 6 months after he started dating Victoria. David's silence was telling. So you introduced my son to a con artist, and you benefited financially from the relationship. And now you feel terrible that things didn't work out. How convenient. Harold, that's not fair. I didn't know she was. You didn't care to know. There's a difference. I pushed a piece of paper across the table. This is a timeline of Marcus's investment in your project and his relationship with Victoria. The correlation is interesting. I'm not saying you conspired with her. I don't think you're that clever or that malicious. But I am saying you put your financial interests above my son's well-being. What do you want from me? I want you to understand the consequences of your carelessness. Marcus lost 15 years to that woman. He lost money, time, emotional energy, and his ability to trust. And you played a role in that. I stood up. I've already spoken to your other friends, Robert, Jim, Kevin. I've told them about this timeline, about your failure to vet Victoria. I've suggested they be cautious about any investment opportunities you present or any introductions you make. David's face went white. You're destroying my reputation. I'm telling the truth. If the truth destroys your reputation, that's on you, not me. Maybe next time you'll think twice before vouching for someone you haven't properly vetted. Maybe you'll prioritize friendship over profit. I left him sitting at the table, staring at his untouched food. I'd paid for my meal on the way out. Within 2 months, David's social circle had cooled toward him considerably. He lost out on 2 major investment opportunities when his usual partners decided to go with other developers. He wasn't ruined. I'm not that vindictive, but he was wounded. He'd learned that actions have consequences, even seemingly small ones, like a careless introduction. By the summer, Marcus was doing better. He'd thrown himself into therapy, both individual and group sessions for people recovering from manipulative relationships. He'd started dating again, cautiously, with better judgment. He'd even begun to laugh again, genuine laughter that reached his eyes. We developed a new routine. He'd come to the guest house 3 or 4 evenings a week, and we'd have dinner together, talk about his day, watch old movies. It reminded me of when he was young, before Margaret died, before life got complicated. One evening in July, as we sat on the small porch watching the sunset, he asked me something I'd been expecting. Dad, did you enjoy it? The revenge, I mean? I considered the question carefully. Enjoy isn't the right word. Satisfaction, maybe. Justice, certainly. But not enjoyment. It was elaborate. The cameras, the documentation, the way you handled Victoria. You could have just called the police on day 1. I could have. But would that have been enough? She would have made bail, hired a lawyer, probably convinced you I was confused or vindictive. She might have beaten the charges, or gotten a plea deal with minimal consequences. And you would have spent years wondering if I'd overreacted, if there was some explanation, if your marriage could have been saved. Instead, you made sure I saw exactly who she was. Yes. And I made sure everyone else who needed to learn a lesson learned it too. That's not revenge, son. That's accountability. Marcus was quiet for a moment. I heard about what you did to David. And Dr. Chen. They bore responsibility too. Maybe not as much as Victoria, but enough. Dr. Chen could have prevented months of theft if he'd been more vigilant. David could have prevented the entire relationship if he'd been honest. They both took the easy path, the path that avoided inconvenience or discomfort. They needed to understand that the easy path sometimes leads to harm. You've changed, Marcus observed. Since Mom died. You're harder now. More willing to fight. Yes. Your mother was the gentle one, the one who saw the best in people. I was always the prosecutor, the one who saw what people were capable of. When she died, I lost my balance. I became too soft, too willing to give people the benefit of the doubt, because that's what she would have wanted. I paused, but Victoria reminded me why I spent 35 years putting criminals away. Because some people are predators. And predators need to be stopped, not tolerated. Do you think she's learned anything? Victoria? Probably not. People like her rarely do. But she's learned that I'm not an easy mark. And she's learned that there are consequences for her actions. Maybe that will make her think twice before targeting someone else's family. We sat in comfortable silence for a while, and then Marcus said something that surprised me. There's something I haven't told you. Victoria contacted me last month. I turned to him sharply. She violated the no-contact agreement? Through a friend, technically. She didn't reach out directly. But the message got to me. He pulled out his phone and showed me a text from an unknown number. It read, "Tell Marcus I'm sorry. I made mistakes. I'd like to talk, make things right. He deserves to hear my side. I hope you didn't respond." I said, "I didn't. But Dad, what if she really is sorry? What if she wants to make amends?" This was the moment I'd been dreading. Despite everything, despite the evidence and the betrayal, Marcus had a good heart. He wanted to believe in redemption, in second chances. It was one of his finest qualities, and also his greatest vulnerability. "Son, do you remember what I taught you about con artists when you were studying for your CPA exams? That they're always playing a long game?" Exactly. Victoria is out there somewhere, probably in difficult circumstances. She lost her comfortable life, her meal ticket, her security. Now she's trying to open a door back in. That apology isn't sincere, it's strategy. She's testing whether you'll respond, whether there's still a crack in your armor she can exploit. But what if you're wrong? What if people can change? They can. But change requires genuine self-reflection, accountability, and time. It's been 4 months, Marcus. That's not enough time for someone like Victoria to fundamentally change who she is. This is manipulation. She's hoping you'll feel guilty, or lonely, or nostalgic. She's hoping you'll doubt yourself, doubt what you saw, doubt what you know to be true. I could see him struggling with it, the eternal battle between hope and wisdom. "Let me tell you something about my years as a prosecutor," I continued. "I saw hundreds of criminals, people who'd done terrible things. And do you know what separated the ones who actually reformed from the ones who just went back to crime? The ones who reformed took full responsibility. They didn't make excuses. They didn't try to shift blame. They didn't ask their victims for forgiveness. They understood they'd lost that right. They quietly did the work of becoming better people, without expecting rewards or recognition. And Victoria's message? I made mistakes. That's minimization. He deserves to hear my side, That's an attempt to rewrite history, to present a counter-narrative that puts her in a better light. Make things right. That's suggesting she can undo the harm, that forgiveness can be negotiated. None of that sounds like genuine remorse to me. It sounds like someone who's looking for another angle. Marcus nodded slowly. You're right. I know you're right. But part of me still wants to believe. I know. That's what makes you a good person. But don't let your goodness blind you to danger. You can be kind without being foolish. You can believe in redemption without offering yourself up as a test case. He deleted the message while I watched. Thanks, Dad. For everything. For protecting me, even when I didn't know I needed it. That's what family does. We protect each other. But as I said it, I felt a nagging unease. Victoria's attempt to contact Marcus suggested she wasn't done yet. She was probing, testing, looking for weaknesses. And I had a feeling the game wasn't over. My instincts proved correct 2 weeks later. I was reviewing my bank statements, a habit from my prosecutor days, always checking for irregularities, when I noticed something odd. There was a small charge from a company I didn't recognize. Apex Data Solutions, $29.99. It was the kind of minor charge that most people would overlook, small enough not to trigger immediate concern. But I'd never authorized it, and I didn't recognize the company. I called my bank immediately. After being transferred twice, I reached a fraud specialist who looked into it. Mr. Westmore, that charge is from a background check service. It looks like someone ran a comprehensive background report on you 3 days ago. My blood ran cold. Can you tell me who authorized it? I can't provide details about the purchaser, but the charge was made using your credit card information. Do you want to dispute it? Yes. And I want my card canceled immediately and a new one issued. Also, can you tell me what information this company provides in their reports? They're one of the more comprehensive services. Property records, financial information, legal history, family members, associates. Basically everything that's publicly available, compiled into one report. After I hung up, I sat very still, thinking. Victoria was researching me. That meant she was planning something. But what? I called my attorney, Gerald Morrison, who'd handled my estate planning for 20 years. Gerald, I need you to review all my legal documents, the trust, my will, everything. I want to make sure there are no vulnerabilities, no loopholes someone could exploit. Harold, what's going on? I explained about the background check charge. Gerald was silent for a moment, then said, I'll review everything today. But Harold, if Victoria is digging into your affairs, we should consider getting a restraining order. On what grounds? She hasn't contacted me directly. She hasn't violated any terms of the divorce agreement. All she did was run a background check, which isn't illegal. It's harassment. It's information gathering. And going to court would tip our hand, let her know we're aware of her interest. No, I want to know what she's planning before we act. This could be dangerous, Harold. She's already proven she's willing to harm you for profit. Which is why I need to be prepared. Review the documents, Gerald. I'll handle the rest. After we hung up, I began my own investigation. I pulled up Apex Data Solutions' website and purchased a report on myself, paying the $29.99 to see exactly what Victoria now knew about me. The report arrived within an hour, and it was comprehensive. My home address, phone numbers, email addresses, property records showing the value of the estate, my financial history, legal cases I'd prosecuted, Marcus's information, even Margaret's obituary. One item caught my attention, a section on my health insurance claims. It showed I had significant medical expenses, regular doctor visits, and prescriptions for serious conditions. Anyone reading this would conclude I was in declining health. That's what she was after. She thought I was dying. I pulled up my calendar and checked my appointments. I had a routine cardiology visit scheduled for next week and a follow-up with my oncologist. I'd had prostate cancer 5 years ago, successfully treated but requiring regular monitoring. Victoria must have seen the insurance claims and assumed the cancer had returned, or that my heart condition was worsening. She was betting that I didn't have much time left, and she was positioning herself for, what? A second attempt to get into the will? A lawsuit claiming elder abuse on my part? I needed to think several moves ahead. I called Marcus. Son, I need to tell you something, and I need you to trust me. Victoria is planning something. I don't know what yet, but she's researching me, and I think she's working up to a new scheme. What kind of scheme? I'm not sure yet. But I need you to be prepared. If she contacts you again, or if anything unusual happens, I need you to tell me immediately. And Marcus? Don't trust anything she says, no matter how convincing it sounds. Dad, you're scaring me. Good. A little healthy fear will keep you alert. Just promise me you'll be careful. He promised, though I could hear the worry in his voice. Over the next 2 weeks, I increased my vigilance. I checked my mail carefully, screened my calls, varied my routine. I had Gerald review all my legal documents. They were airtight, with multiple safeguards against manipulation or coercion. The trust was irrevocable with specific provisions about modifications. My will had witnesses and notarization. Everything was documented, legal, protected. But I still felt like I was waiting for a bomb to drop. The bomb dropped on a Thursday morning in August. I received a certified letter from a law firm I didn't recognize, Patterson and Associates, based in a city 2 hours away. The letter informed me that I was being sued. The plaintiff was Victoria Westmore. The claim was for defamation, emotional distress, and elder abuse. I read the complaint with growing disbelief. According to Victoria's lawsuit, I had falsely accused her of theft through manufactured evidence, harassed and intimidated her, causing severe emotional distress, manipulated Marcus into divorcing her, spread malicious lies about her to damage her reputation, abused my position as an elderly person to gain sympathy and credibility, cost her financial security, career opportunities, and social standing. The complaint sought damages of $2 million. It was absurd, audacious, and, I had to admit, cleverly constructed. She was using my age against me, suggesting I was a manipulative elder who'd weaponized my medical conditions and victim status. She was recasting herself as the real victim, gaslit and abused by a vindictive old man. And she filed in a jurisdiction 2 hours away, probably hoping I'd find it too difficult to defend myself properly. I called Gerald immediately. Did you see the lawsuit? Just got it. Harold, this is frivolous. She doesn't have a leg to stand on. Maybe legally, but she's playing a different game. She's trying to force a settlement. She knows that fighting a lawsuit is expensive, exhausting, and risky. She's betting I'll pay her to go away rather than go through a trial. But you have ironclad evidence, which I'll have to present in court in public. The videos, the documentation, all of it becomes public record. It will be humiliating for Marcus, having his failed marriage dissected in court proceedings. It will be stressful for me, potentially dangerous given my health. And even if I win, I'll have spent months and tens of thousands of dollars defending myself. So what do you want to do? I smiled, though Gerald couldn't see it. I want to do what I do best. I want to prosecute. Victoria had made a critical error. By filing a lawsuit, she'd put herself under oath. She'd have to testify, answer questions, provide evidence. And unlike our private confrontation, this would be in a courtroom, with rules and procedures and consequences for lying. She'd given me exactly what I needed, a legal forum to destroy her credibility completely. I called a former colleague from my prosecutor days, Samuel Chin, who'd left the DA's office to become a civil litigator. "Sam, I need your help. And I need someone vicious." Sam laughed. "Harold, you taught me everything I know about being vicious in court. Tell me what's going on." I explained the situation, sent him copies of all my documentation, and within 2 days, he filed a motion to dismiss along with a countersuit. Our countersuit claimed frivolous litigation, abuse of process, malicious prosecution, fraud upon the court, intentional infliction of emotional distress. We also filed a motion to move the case to our local jurisdiction, arguing that Victoria had filed remotely to harass an elderly person. But more importantly, Sam began the discovery process. We submitted interrogatories, written questions Victoria would have to answer under oath. We requested documents, including her financial records, phone records, and any evidence she had to support her claims. We scheduled depositions of Victoria, her attorney, and any witnesses she planned to call. Victoria's attorney, a solo practitioner named Michael Patterson, clearly hadn't expected this level of resistance. Most elder abuse cases he probably handled were legitimate, or resulted in quick settlements. He'd taken Victoria's case assuming it would follow that pattern. He was about to learn otherwise. The discovery responses came back 6 weeks later, and they were revealing. Victoria's financial records showed she was in dire straits. She'd been living off credit cards since the divorce, had defaulted on 2 loans, and was facing eviction from her apartment. Her phone records showed multiple calls to Marcus's number, despite the no-contact agreement. Most damning, her interrogatory responses contradicted her own complaint. She claimed she'd never taken my medication, then admitted she'd borrowed some pills but said I'd given permission. She claimed I'd manipulated Marcus, then admitted she'd never actually witnessed any manipulation. She claimed her reputation had been damaged, but couldn't provide any specific instances of me spreading lies, because I hadn't. Sam sent me the discovery responses with a note. "This is going to be a massacre." The deposition was scheduled for October 15th at a conference room in our local courthouse. I insisted on being present, even though as a plaintiff I didn't have to be there. I wanted Victoria to see me, to know that I wasn't intimidated. She arrived 15 minutes late, dressed expensively but showing signs of stress, dark circles under her eyes, weight loss, nervous energy. Her attorney looked uncomfortable. Sam conducted the deposition with surgical precision. He started with basic questions, establishing Victoria's background, her marriages, her work history. Then he moved to the specific claims. "Ms. Westmore, in your complaint you claim that Mr. Harold Westmore falsely accused you of theft. Is that correct?" "Yes." "And you maintain that you never took his medication without permission?" "That's right." "Not even once?" A pause. "He may have said I could borrow some pain pills once or twice." "May have or did?" "Did. He offered them to me." "When was this?" "I don't remember exactly." "Was it before or after you moved in with Marcus?" "After. So sometime in the last 15 years. "And you can't remember when?" "It was several times. I didn't keep a diary." Sam pulled out a still image from one of my security cameras, time-stamped and dated. "Ms. Westmore, do you recognize this image?" She paled. "I've never seen that. It's dated July 22nd of last year. Does this refresh your recollection about taking Mr. Westmore's medication?" Her attorney intervened. "My client has already answered the question." "Actually, she hasn't." "Ms. Westmore, is this you in the photograph?" Long pause. It might be. "Ms. Westmore, this is a screenshot from a security camera in Mr. Westmore's bathroom. The resolution is quite clear. Is this you, yes or no? Yes. And what are you doing in this image? I was checking his medicine cabinet to see if he needed any refills. Were you employed as his caregiver? No, but... Did he ask you to check his medications? Not specifically, but I was helping. Ms. Westmore, can you explain why your hand is inside a prescription bottle in this image? She had no good answer. Sam continued for 3 hours, methodically demolishing every claim in her complaint. He showed her multiple videos, multiple timestamps, caught her in lie after lie. By the end, her attorney looked like he wanted to be anywhere else. The final blow came when Sam asked about her background check on me. Ms. Westmore, did you purchase a background report on Harold Westmore from Apex Data Solutions? I don't. I may have. Using his credit card information without authorization? Her attorney's head snapped up. My client will not answer that question. That's fine. We have the records from the credit card company showing the charge, and we've subpoenaed Apex Data Solutions for their records of who purchased the report. We'll have that information regardless of your client's answer. After the deposition, Patterson asked to speak with Sam privately. I waited in the courthouse hallway, watching Victoria sit slumped in a chair 20 feet away, her expensive outfit unable to hide her defeat. Sam emerged 30 minutes later. They want to settle. What are the terms? Victoria drops her lawsuit, pays our legal fees, and signs an affidavit admitting she made false claims. In exchange, we don't pursue criminal charges for the credit card fraud or sue for malicious prosecution. Counteroffer. She drops her lawsuit, pays our legal fees, signs the affidavit, and also participates in a video statement admitting what she did. That video will be shown to Marcus, so he can see her admit the truth without any manipulation or spin. Sam went back in. 10 minutes later, he returned. They agreed. She's desperate, Harold. She can't afford to go to trial, and she knows she'll lose. Good. Schedule the video statement for next week. I want this finished. The video statement was recorded in Gerald's office, with both attorneys present and a court reporter taking down every word. Victoria looked haggard, much older than her 48 years. The stress of her failing scheme had taken its toll. Sam asked the questions. Please state your name for the record. Victoria and Westmore. And you understand this statement is being made under oath, subject to penalty of perjury? Yes. Ms. Westmore, why did you file a lawsuit against Harold Westmore? Her voice was barely audible. I thought I could force a settlement. I needed money, and I thought he would pay me to avoid going to court. Was there any truth to the allegations in your complaint? No. Did Harold Westmore falsely accuse you of theft? No. I stole his medication. He was telling the truth. How many times did you steal his medication? I don't know exactly. 10, maybe 15 times over 6 months. Did you understand this was dangerous? That he needed this medication for his health? Yes. Her voice cracked. I knew. Why did you do it? I was selling the pain medication. We had debts, and I needed money, and I thought he wouldn't notice. He's old, and I thought he was confused about how much medication he was taking. So you exploited his age and medical condition? A long pause. Yes. Did Harold Westmore manipulate Marcus into divorcing you? No. Marcus saw video evidence of what I'd done. He made his own choice. Did Harold Westmore spread lies about you? No. He told the truth. I just didn't want people to know it. Sam continued for another 20 minutes, extracting admissions for every false claim she'd made. By the end, Victoria was crying, her makeup streaked, her composure completely shattered. One final question, Ms. Westmore. Do you have anything you'd like to say to Harold Westmore or his son Marcus? She looked directly at the camera, her eyes red. I'm sorry. I'm sorry for what I did, for the harm I caused. I was wrong. I was selfish and greedy, and I hurt people who didn't deserve it. I can't undo it, but I want them to know I understand how terrible it was. For the first time, she actually sounded sincere. Maybe hitting rock bottom had given her a moment of genuine self-awareness. Or maybe she was just that good an actress, even now. We ended the recording. Victoria signed the settlement agreement, the affidavit, and a new no-contact order that included criminal penalties for violation. Then she left, escorted out by her attorney, and I never saw her again. That evening, I brought the video to Marcus. We sat in his living room, the main house that he'd now truly made his own, redecorating and removing all traces of Victoria's influence. Dad, are you sure I should watch this? You need to see it. Not for me, but for you. So you know, definitively, that you made the right choice. So you never doubt yourself. He watched in silence. When Victoria admitted she'd known she was endangering my health and did it anyway, I saw his jaw tighten. When she confessed to exploiting my age, he closed his eyes briefly. When she admitted the lawsuit was just an attempt at extortion, he shook his head. At the end, when Victoria apologized, Marcus stopped the video. Do you think she meant that? He asked. Maybe. In that moment, facing total defeat, maybe she had a glimpse of real remorse. But son, here's what I've learned in 7 decades of life. Remorse without change is just regret at being caught. If Victoria truly meant that apology, she'll spend the next years probing it through her actions, not her words. And we'll never know, because she's out of our lives. Good. He stood up and ejected the USB drive, holding it for a moment. Thank you, Dad. For fighting for me. For protecting me. For showing me the truth. That's what fathers do. He hugged me then, a long embrace that reminded me of when he was a boy and I was his hero, before he grew up and saw my flaws and complications. For a moment, I was that hero again. 2 years have passed since Victoria signed that settlement agreement. Life has returned to a comfortable rhythm, though we're both wiser and warier now. Marcus did eventually remarry, to a kind woman named Sarah who's a teacher at the local elementary school. I vetted her thoroughly before he proposed, ran background checks, talked to her references, even hired a private investigator. Marcus laughed at my paranoia, but also admitted he appreciated it. Sarah understood, and even offered to help with the investigation herself. Anyone who can laugh at being investigated and offer to help with their own vetting is someone worth knowing. They married last spring in a small ceremony in our garden, right where Margaret's roses bloom brightest. Sarah's daughter from her first marriage, a bright 10-year-old named Emma, now calls me Grandpa Harold. It's a title that brings me more joy than I expected. I'm still living in the guest house, though Marcus has renovated it extensively. New kitchen, updated bathroom, better heating. He insists I'm staying here as long as I want, that this is my home. I believe him now in a way I couldn't when Victoria was in the picture. My health is stable. I switched to Dr. Morrison, Dr. Chin's sister, as it happens, and she's everything her brother wasn't. Attentive, thorough, always asking the right questions. The complaints I filed against her brother led to actual changes in his practice. I heard through Gerald that Dr. Chin now requires all elderly patients to have medication logs and asks detailed questions about home safety. Good. He learned. David, Marcus's former friend, moved away. His business declined after word spread about his careless vouching for Victoria. Last I heard, he's doing real estate development in another state, hopefully with more integrity. As for Victoria, I occasionally check public records to see where she ended up.